our speaker today. I need my glasses for this. Now, I didn't check, I meant to check the pronunciation of your name. Julia Camacho Wejbrandt? Wejbrandt, sorry. Julia is a PhD student at the Imperial College of London, where she is both a Val Donahue Scholar and a Max and Gladys Rothschild Scholar. She conducts research in the Centre for Bio-Inspired Technology, focusing on nano-robotics for single-cell sensing manipulation. I have no idea what that means. I think she'll probably tell us. She holds a bachelor's degree in biomedical science from the King's College London and Master of Research in robotic surgery from ICL. During her undergraduate studies, she spent time as a visiting student and researcher at Johns Hopkins University and Hospital. Julia grew up mostly in Paris, in a Brazilian-Swedish family, and of course Julia is the daughter of our beloved Marta, that nurtured her curiosity for philosophy and science. As a dyslexic student, she faced significant challenges in school and was advised to be put in a special needs school. At the age of 12, however, she defied expectations, learning to read and write and even earning an English School Award for outstanding and moving end-of-year essay. Today, Julia shares her story of resilience with younger audiences, giving talks that encourage students to persevere in their ambitions despite adversity. Now, we may not be the younger audience, but I am sure that we'll learn something about resilience and improving ourselves from Julia today. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. I would like to start off by saying thank you to the Women's International Club for inviting me to speak today. It is a real privilege to stand here for me to share my story with you, so thank you. So as the introduction rightly said, I'm a PhD student in electrical and electronic engineering at Imperial College London. My specific area of research is in nano-robotics for medical applications. I know it sounds very cool and complicated, but don't worry, I will break it down later in the presentation to explain exactly what I do, and then it will be even cooler. But before I get to sharing my story, I want to talk to you about virtues, because this is what today is fundamentally about. It is about one particular virtue, resilience. I want to take you back to around 300 BC, to Athens in Greece, where Aristotle was writing his most famous book, Nicomachean Ethics. In his book, Aristotle teaches us about how to live a good and happy life. His answer is to be virtuous. Virtue, for Aristotle, is the mean between two behavioral extremes when faced with everyday existence, from how much you eat to handling a business deal. Honestly, when do any of us really live perfectly in that balance? But that isn't what Aristotle is getting at either. Experiences, life, it is about us learning how to find that balance, how to acquire virtue. He even says that it is what human relations are for, that we form friendships with people who have virtues we want to have ourselves. And we are attracted to that friendship so that we can grow in that virtue. And that friendships end and people clash when there is no element of growth or virtue acquisition in that relationship. There are so many virtues that could be discussed, but I want to focus on the one I believe to be crucial, relevant, especially in today's society, and also in every step that we take. That virtue that lies between the extremes of depressiveness and obliviousness. Life is full of challenges. It is like walking on a forest path. There are beautiful sceneries, birds and butterflies everywhere, but on your path there are holes in the ground, mud, rocks you trip over, even a fallen tree that blocks the way. Now, not even that. Even worse, synthesis is rock. And depending on the challenge, the situation, there is a balance to strike. Being depressive, which is good for realizing what is going on, for acknowledging, validating, and giving value to what has been lost or about to be lost. But depressiveness also comes with hopelessness, the inability to see beyond the now, debilitatingly preventing you from seeing a solution, carrying out that solution. You are static on your path. Then there is the opposite extreme, obliviousness. The first thought of comparison is men. The classic all-day joke where us women say A because we mean B, and we assume that man will also naturally do C. But in the end, he does A and only A, and we get annoyed. Unbelievable. But if we move past the joke, we see that the man is oblivious to the meaning, the emotions, and the need. He doesn't comprehend the beyond of what is lying in front of him. So he doesn't see the rock and trips over it and the next one and doesn't understand why his ankle now hurts. He doesn't learn how to walk over the rocks. But being oblivious is also really great. How many times have you said to yourself, God, if only I cared less? Or even, why do men never have drama? Because they aren't reading between the lines. They're not looking for B, assuming C. They are just looking at A. Of course, it is just a blanket statement and a funny stereotype that helps to convey a point. A perfect example is actually one from my brother. He was around 6 years old at the time. We were at a friend's gathering, and he wanted to join the other little kids with their game. This one little girl said, "No, you can't play with us." And my brother walked away with a sad face and crossed arms. I kid you not, a couple of minutes later, music comes on, and my brother gets all happy and starts to dance. The girl that was mean to him comes to him immediately and wants to dance with him. My brother, with a big smile, starts dancing with him. What? I think when my mom and I saw that scenario, we both understood better about striking the balance between depressiveness and obliviousness. Because we both would have definitely still been in that corner, grumpy, with our arms crossed, not wanting to participate at all with the rest of the evening. But of course, if we were to think 20 years on, and my brother was 26-year-old instead, and the same thing had happened, then this situation would have been toxic for him, dangerous. He would have maintained a relationship with a girl that hurts his feelings and only takes. But at 6, this amount of obliviousness was perfect. It allowed him to enjoy the rest of the party. So there is a balance to strike, depending on the moment, the time. This balance is called resilience. Resilience is the ability to be happy, successful, again after something difficult or bad has happened. Not being oblivious by acknowledging the bad and learning from it, but also by not being depressed, being able to move forward, to succeed and be happy. This is essential, and it is a virtue we are all of us are still learning and still growing in. Resilience is the most important virtue life has to offer us, a necessity for life itself. But how do we acquire this virtue? And the truth is that I don't think it is about existence alone, like Jean-Paul Sartre said, existence precedes essence. I think it is more of an active role than a passive one. It is about what I choose to learn, to change about myself, given an experience. Like Carl Jung says, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. Because it was not my experiences alone that shaped me into the person I am today. Because, as we'll see later, when I share my journey, there are so many occasions where I could have chosen an easier path. A path that was expected of me. My mom even once asked me, why does it feel like you purposely choose challenge in your life? But it's not that I choose challenge, it's that I choose growth. I choose to define myself differently, to define myself by my opportunities. I choose to define myself as resilient. And I'm not perfectly resilient either. As I said just moments ago, it is a virtue we are all learning in, including myself, but it is a virtue that I'm actively aspiring towards no matter what. And you might ask me, but what happens if you fail at a challenge? But how can I fail? My aim is to continue to walk forward, to try, to be at a balance, to be resilient. It is never to be static at either end of depressiveness or obliviousness. And so, as long as I'm trying, there is no such thing as failure. Even if I don't win, I have learned something new. I have grown. I am one step closer to being resilient. So, my story. I'm going to spend the rest of the presentation speaking about my journey, the anecdotes that shaped me and my mindset. Every existence is subjective. None is harder or easier than the other. But hopefully, through sharing and using my story, we can build a platform together, a platform for you to reflect at your own experience, to see how you have already grown from your experiences, and how you allow it to shape you from now on. To move away from thoughts of failure and regret to a mindset of growth and of gain. So let's start from the beginning. So there is Papa, and this is Mamai. We're sitting at the front there. My dad is Swedish and an electrical and robotic engineer. My mom is Brazilian and a psychologist and psychotherapist. So my house has always been a really sciencey and philosophy. I was born in France, so my parents were living quite far from home with no family nearby. And they only spoke in their respective languages because that is what they were most comfortable with. However, as time went on, I was 3 and still couldn't say a word. My go-to sound was for everything. My parents took me to a doctor, and he told them that I had a language retardation and that I might never speak. Little did they know that actually all I needed was to interact with other children. And at age 3, we moved to London, and I was put up in the local nursery. And sometime later, I came home speaking English, and only English. And my parents were confused. You see, I understood my parents perfectly, but I didn't perceive languages as a language. I perceived it as these are Mamai words, and these are Papa words, and children use English words. As I grew up, I started to speak Portuguese and Swedish, and understood that these were all different languages. My dad often jokes that the reason why I talk so much is to make up for all those lost years. Once I started talking, my parents found out that I was a very curious child. I asked about everything. Why? This was from how things worked to questioning my mom's demands, because I am your mom and I said so was a classic end of discussion for my mom, which often meant I was very good at making a good point. And I was curious about the biggest things, such as why there were wars after accidentally switching from a children's program to the news, and sobbed and even offered solutions such as country playdates. And even curiosities about the smallest of things. My mom tells about this one time she was walking back into the house, and I was following behind, and she heard a sudden gasp. My mom quickly turned around and said, "What happened, Julia?" And I pointed to the floor and said, "Look, over there, a leaf." There was a leaf that had entered the house. I crouched down, put my hand on my chin and said, how did it get in here? Maybe it came under your shoe, or maybe the wind blew it in. Until today, I still haven't solved that mystery. And I'm 24 years old, so it has been quite a while. I also passionately knew exactly what I wanted to be when I was older. I wanted to be a researcher who would change the world and help other people. When I was around 8, I remember in biology class, I was learning about clean water and the inefficiencies of filter paper. At the end of the class, I confidently told my teacher that I would make a filter paper that would be 100% able to purify water, and that it would solve the lack of clean water access in developing countries. Haven't done that yet. Although I was a very demanding child, and my mom said one was enough, I managed to convince my mom that I needed a sister, and I got a sister. And later on, that I wanted a brother, and I got a brother. Can I just add that these are not adopted? I was just a very bossy child, and I got exactly what I asked for. And this is my dear Liv and Stig. At school, I was great at maths and science, but when it came to reading, I couldn't, but I had a secret. I would ask my parents to read me my homework books, and I would memorize the words they would say and the flick of the page. This meant I zoomed through the school books very quickly. I was a genius. Until my teacher caught me reading the homework book with my eyes closed. My excuse, well, obviously, if Superman can see through things, then so can I. But that didn't work, and my teacher flipped to a random page and asked me to read. And she found that I couldn't read a word. And I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and I was around 7 years old. Dyslexia is a set of processing difficulties that affect the acquisition of reading and spelling. This is the new 2025 definition, and I really like this new definition because the older one used the term disability, and I believe that added a misconception and a complexity to dyslexia that isn't true. And I do feel like it contributed to quite a lot of friction in my life, as we will later see. And maybe some teachers would have been better equipped to help me if they had had a better understanding of what dyslexia is. Not an inability to learn how to read and write, but just a different way of learning that requires more time and patience. So I needed to learn how to read to be able to keep up with class. And so I started getting taken out of class for reading. I remember having to wake up extra early each morning to do exercises to help my dyslexia. And when I came back home, instead of playing like other kids my age, I would be doing exercises again. And sometimes it feels like I had no childhood, and that really frustrated me. There are, of course, precious memories that arose from that time. My sister Liv, who is 4 years younger than me, was such a fast learner and would read books to me every night. But school was also hard because other children pick up on these differences. I remember when I was asked to read out a short story that we were tasked to write in our English class. And instead of reading what I had written, because I had no idea, I had just phonetically put down words and letters on a page. I just made up the story on the spot. And of course it sounded off, and my teacher then said, "Can I see what you wrote?" And she then said, "You didn't read what you wrote." And immediately this boy in my class called out, "She can't even read her own writing." And from then on, I was labeled as the girl who couldn't even read her own writing. Even after 4 years, so I was around 7 years old then, and now I was around 11, even though I had changed school twice, that one kid coming from that classroom, visiting a new classmate of mine, recognized me and said, "Wait, are you that girl who couldn't even read her own writing?" And he told my new classroom what had happened. Bullying is a repetitive, intentional hurting of one person or group by another person or group, where the relationship involves an imbalance of power. Bullying can be physical, verbal, or psychological. It can happen face-to-face or online. But the bullying was not limited to my inability to read. Bullying evolves. Once you are the target, you are the target. Once, there was a time when these twins in my year group threw a birthday party, and they invited the whole year group, even the teachers, and I wasn't. And when I told them that maybe they had forgotten me, it can happen, our year group was relatively big, they said there wasn't enough room for me. My mom often had to pick me up early from school, so I wouldn't see all the kids going to parties and going to play dates together. I was called names that I stole. Some girl actually put stuff in my bag to prove that I did. Someone's ugly dress, shampoo, a Nintendo DS charger. Look, I always wanted a Nintendo DS charger for my parents, but they gave me a PSP. So I understand that they found a Nintendo DS in my bag, but the charger, what on earth was I going to do with a charger? And I remember saying that to the girl and being like, what am I going to do? They also used to call me ugly, dog face, fat. Don't worry, I knew I was a very skinny child. And I can see that the bullying doesn't really make sense. There was a time in my class where this girl in my class wrote a list of things she hated about me. And then it was read out loud on the sports field. The list started with, I hate how Julia speaks about her mom. I hate how Julia speaks about her brother. I remember feeling so much pity for this girl. It was such a confusing feeling because I saw how everyone was looking at me and being like, this is so mean. But I wasn't hurt. I mean, I was sad that the aim was to hurt me, but what was being said was more reflective on the girl who had written the list. My mom describes my school years as a cycle of destruction and construction, where she would pick me up from school, I would cry, telling her all that had happened. She would ask me what I had done, sometimes nothing, so then it would just be an unfortunate coincidence, and sometimes I had contributed to the situation. And I would learn what I should do next from that. And then she would build me up, and then just take me to school the next morning to be destroyed. When it came to bullying, at first I used to talk back. Yep, that was sassy Julia right there. There was even one time my mom saw the mothers of the boys in my class and asked them if they could speak to their sons about just leaving me alone. The boys didn't have to be friends with me. They just didn't have to talk to me. One of the mothers spoke up and said, if your daughter just learned to put her head down when my son spoke to her, then she wouldn't have a problem. I think she messed with the wrong woman, because my mom then commanded me to speak back and even stronger. But there was a turning point in this journey when I truly learned from my bullying. When I realized that talking back wasn't always the answer or necessary, and I was going from the why am I being bullied and the self-pity to what can I learn from this situation? What can I take away from being bullied? It all happened at playtime. I must have been in year 5 or 6, so around 10 years old, when I was walking around alone as usual, and noticed these 2 kids in the year below me, acting quite strangely. The boy stood straight with his arm folded with pride and was saying, crazy. And the other girl, who I knew of because she was quite rude and strange, was just standing in front of the boy, a little curve and an angry expression, twitching and making weird sounds. And I approached and asked, what's going on? And the boy said to me, look at her. She's acting crazy, no? And I said, yeah, crazy. I didn't think about it. I didn't think about how it could make that girl feel to be called crazy. Why would I? Everyone calls me names. So I joined in. Crazy, crazy, in unison with the boy. With every crazy, she got more aggressive with her demeanor. She didn't like being called crazy. Then suddenly, she lashed out her hand and clawed my face. I had nail marks bleeding diagonally from my forehead to my cheek, and that's when I realized. Of course, physical violence is always wrong and the worst, but I had done wrong. I had treated her the way I didn't want to be treated. I had missed an opportunity to stop a bullying situation, and instead, I had joined in. Yes, bullying is horrible, but I had the privilege to learn how not to treat others. I learned about empathy, about care, the importance of helping others, something that I wanted. But my real challenge truly started when I moved to secondary school. I was 11 years old, and I still could not read or write. The secondary school requested a meeting with my parents. They recommended that I attend a special needs school instead. as my dyslexia was too severe for me to receive a standard education. My parents were told that I would never finish school or go to university, and that my priority should be to learn how to live independently, and that it would be a happier and easier path for me. But my parents couldn't give up on my dreams. Remember, I wanted to become a scientist and save the world. And my parents knew I was great at science. They used to teach me so many things, and I, of course, asked so many questions. My parents were even once called into school because the science teachers wanted my parents to stop teaching me outside the scope of the syllabus because I was being quite disruptive to the learning of my class. This came because a teacher said that the smallest thing was an atom, but obviously she forgot about leptons and electrons and quarks. My parents believed that I just needed more time, and they were prepared to do anything for me to be able to go to a standard school. But the secondary school said no. In the end, the only school to accept me was a private one. This, of course, didn't come easily, and sacrifices were needed. My dad had to get a new job to afford the fees, but the job, unfortunately, was far from home. The private school was in Paris, and my dad's job in Lyon, even today. Until COVID, my dad used to go to Lyon on Monday morning and come back on Friday evening. A once close-knit family, one which always had dinner together, where I shared everything that happened about my day every evening, was now split. This was felt by all of us. At one point, Stig, who was really young, maybe 3, started to develop rashes. We thought it was an allergic reaction, but the doctor said after listening to our situation that his only remedy would be to accompany my dad for a week at work. She explained that Stig couldn't express himself like us, and he was confused, anxious with why his dad always left him. And this manifested with rashes. So my brother got a new suit and a tie and went on a week-long trip with my dad. He came back so happy, telling us about how he had dealt with very important documents, shredding the paper, and the rashes went. So life was already tough, but academically and socially. But now, with my parents' sacrifice and my burning desire to prove that I should be at a standard school, life was tougher than ever. And although it seemed impossible, out of pure innocent hope, just because my mom told me, "You will make it," I pushed through failure after failure. At the end of the year exams for my first year of secondary school, for English, we were tasked to write an essay on a challenge we had faced and how we overcame it. I remember in that moment, I picked up the pen and just wrote about dyslexia. I didn't organize a structure like I had been taught or I had studied for. I just wrote from the heart about my pain and how I still hadn't succeeded. A month later, it was the school's big end of year ceremony, where all the parents came in and top students in each subject received a prize. An all-year top student prize and a prize for the students that most progressed and then came on top. But no one knew who was going to receive the prizes until the ceremony. I remember that day so clearly. I remember how I felt, still so vividly as though it was just yesterday. I was sitting on my chair in the middle of the middle rows, waiting for the ceremony start, and more importantly, for the ceremony just to end. The hall was full, with the parents sitting to the left of the crowd. Of course, the school was still setting up the stage. The speakers were sitting on their chairs. Suddenly, I hear screams, 2 to be exact, from the left. And I recognize those screams. And I see my parents jumping up from their seats, screaming. Let me just repeat, the ceremony hadn't even started yet. My parents, while screaming, looked into the crowd of the students and allocated me way too quickly. and screamed even more, "Julia, you got a prize for English!" I was frozen on my chair, but my parents started running. They ran onto the stage, shook every person's hand. I remember the whole hall clapping. And I got up and walked to the aisle, trying not to step onto anyone's feet. And then my parents ran to me, got down on their knees in front of me, grabbed my hand. They were crying. And they said, "You did it. You got the English prize." They waved this leaflet that they had received with the list of award winners. And I whispered to them, "It's meant to be a surprise. We don't get this paper." And they both went, "Oh." Looked around at the students and got up and walked to their seats quickly. The truth it was, I only realized what had actually happened when I saw my name on the screen. I made it. My English teacher said that the prize was awarded for the most beautiful essay she had read, that had made her emotional. Although it had spelling mistakes, they added to the irony of the text at hand, and she wanted me to know that I actually had succeeded. My dad had once told me a couple of years before, when I was sad and complaining about how I just wanted to be normal, I wanted to just know how to read and write and not be taken away from playing and having fun. Oh, how much I used to cry. And he said to me, "Nothing is impossible. The impossible just takes more time." Here, I was at the end of my time. I had achieved what was once said to be impossible. I learned then that I could achieve whatever I set my mind to. And this is where I learned that in life, there's no such thing as failure, because failure does not exist if you are trying. Failure is the act of not doing anything. And while we still hold on to our ambitions, then in life, we can only gain. We either learn or we win. And that day, I won. I didn't stop at just being able to read and write. I continued working hard to catch up on all the lessons I had missed. 7 years of being taken out of class just to focus on reading. I managed to keep up with the rest of my year group and even started working my way up. I started volunteering as a teacher assistant at the primary school to help children with reading, writing, and maths. I also started a homework and revision session at lunchtime for students that were in their first year of secondary school. It was so popular, and there was a clear upward progression of grades for the students that came. I just knew I didn't want anyone to go through what I had gone through, and I had so many learning techniques for them to try. I even had one student that was failing all his exams at the start of the year, and we worked so hard that he scored the highest at the end of year exams. And if I remember correctly, he got 90% in his biology class test. And that resulted in him getting the biology prize. In my final year of school, we got a new maths teacher. She was so sweet and enthusiastic. And after a few lessons, she came up to me and said, "You know, you were the student I was most excited to meet and teach." And I asked, "Why?" And she said something like, "The other maths teachers told me about you, about how you were at the bottom of your class, how you didn't know anything because you couldn't read and write, and how you worked so hard that now you're one of our best math students." There is something about being recognized and encouraged for your achievements. And although I felt like I hadn't succeeded socially at school, I was still targeted. I felt like in that moment I had completed another mission. I was valued by others. And to be fair, a few math classes later, I was shown exactly that I had also succeeded socially. In one of our final classes before the exams, we had already finished the syllabus and we were just revising. The teacher got chatty and some of us students joined in. Some sexist boy in my math class got annoyed that we were all happy and chatting. because he, all year round, had been too arrogant to pay attention in class and himself had been quite disruptive. And now he was feeling the exam pressure. He aggressively told us to stop chatting. And I said, you need to be more respectful when you talk. And he responded, ha, you don't deserve any respect. In that moment, everyone in my class stood up. And they said, if anyone deserves respect in this class, it is Julia. You, however, are the one that doesn't deserve any. I was in shock. Individuals came to me after the class and told me how they knew they hadn't been friendly with me, but that they honestly wanted me to know that they really respected everything I had done and achieved. That more importantly, they respected that I had never changed, even with the social pressure. I was still myself. The school ended with me not only being respected among my peers, but also as a top student. And I achieved, again, what was once more to said impossible. I graduated school. In reflection, I see that for me, my dyslexia was in reality a gift, a tool I had yet to learn how to use. And once I had, I was able to learn and see things so differently, and this vastly contributed to my knowledge. But more importantly, I had started acquiring the virtue of resilience. And I left school, I left the bullying, the academic struggles, and I took forward with me my new definition of self, as strong, a fighter, as resilient. So what did I do next? Well, I wanted to be a scientist, so I wanted to study biomedical sciences at King's College London, so we set off to London. Biomedical sciences is a degree where we take classes side by side with medical students, but instead of having hospital rotations, we go to the lab to find solutions and medical treatment for diseases. I loved it. I was particularly interested in neuroscience, neuropsychiatry, and surgery. The best hospital for that is Johns Hopkins in America, and King's was testing a collaboration with them. With my grades and internal application, King's nominated me to Johns Hopkins and I as a visiting student, and I was so excited when I got accepted, and it was all funded by the Turing scheme. Here's me flying all the way to Baltimore, where the university is allocated. I wanted to make the most of my experience there. I applied to be part of the research lab at the medical school. I was trained in EEG scoring, essentially reading the electrical activity of the brain of volunteers. In American universities, you can sign up to as many classes as you want. So although the minimum credit was 15, I was at 18 at each semester. And the best part was that class participation counted towards the grade. Now, I was definitely going to shine. I love to talk. And to be fair, my participation was well noted. I took this one class with PhD students in material and chemistry for data science with a very cool professor, and he offered me to stay on in his lab for a summer research position in collaboration with Cornell University. It was completely out of my scope. He was a material scientist and wanted me to work on a data model for material laboratories at both Hopkins and Cornell. I did tell him that I was in the medical field, and he said he had a good feeling that I would pick it up quickly. He said that sometimes coming from a different field can help provide a new set of eyes, and it was so true. I started to see a whole new world of technology and engineering, and it really got me interested in this interface between technology and medicine. At the end of my research project, we drove up to Ithaca at Cornell, such a gorgeous place, and I presented my research there to the other materials laboratory. On my return to King's College London, for my final year, I decided to specialize in human anatomy and neuroscience. In particular, human dissections, with an eye to learn more about neurosurgery. And it was through my final year dissection project where I performed a laminectomy, surgery of the spine. and realized how limiting the current surgical tools are, that I found my real area of passion, robotic surgery. As my final year of university came to an end, I realized my final challenge was approaching, completing university. And I don't think it really sank in until the moment before I was called up to cross the stage for graduation. I want to read to you what I wrote down soon after my graduation, and hopefully you'll be able to capture what I felt in those seconds while I stood behind the stage. As I waited for my turn to cross the stage for my graduation ceremony, I met a young girl with big dreams. She was 11 years old and spoke lovingly about wanting to be able to read. She wanted to go to a big university and become a scientist, where she could save the world. She then paused and spoke sadly of wanting to be a normal child, not a child labeled dyslexic and made fun of by peers. She wanted to attend classes just like everyone else, but had just been told she wouldn't be able to go to school anymore. She explained that the school found it pointless to teach her. She would never finish high school, and she would definitely never go to university. However, this little girl was very adamant that she was capable of anything. With a cheeky grin, she whispered to me, "Papa told me nothing's impossible. The impossible just takes more time." I smiled at her confidence, masking my worry for the hard journey she would have yet to face. She smiled back at me and grabbed my hand. She excitedly tugged me forward and said, "That's us. It's our time to cross the stage." I wish I could go back in time and tell my little self not to cry so much. For in 11 years' time, I would be graduating from King's College London with first-class honours and achieved straight A's while studying abroad at Johns Hopkins University. However, I think little Julia would get too overwhelmed with the news. I still am. Luckily, my parents believed in little Julia and encouraged her to keep on going. Thank you, God, for all that you gave me and for all I have yet to receive. Thank you to my family for all their support and sacrifices that allowed me to achieve everything I ever wanted. Thank you to the extended family and friends that kept praying and rooting for me. Thank you to all of you that told me I couldn't and made fun of me, for you taught me the most valuable lesson, how to be resilient. And these are some more fun pictures of the day. Now, what was next for me? Well, as I said at the start, I'm still learning how to target that resilience balance, and life is full of surprises and challenges. Like my mom often reminds me, what does the cardiogram look like when someone is dead? A flat line? Exactly, she says. And when you're alive, it goes up and down, and so too does our life. We all face challenges and derailments. We have our downs, but what makes us special is how we conquer the situation, how we climb up to our peaks. So, on to the next chapter. Imperial College London, the top university for engineering just after MIT. There, I found the perfect master's program, which was at the Hammond Center for Robotic Surgery. There, a whole degree just for that. Slightly naively, I applied to the program because from the program's website, it didn't appear to be so engineering heavy. A few weeks after my application, the head of the program emailed me. He told me they didn't normally accept non-engineering students, but they found my personal statement interesting, and they were willing to give me an offer if I was up for the challenge. Well, what do you guys think? In that moment in time, I reflected back to my years of hard work, and I knew that nothing could stop me from achieving something except for me. So I said yes to being their experimental student. And you would think that after having already achieved what was once said to be impossible, I would have the confidence made of diamond. But sitting in my first lecture, I was overcome by a feeling I had never felt before. Let me illustrate it to you. In the class, we were around 50 students, and we were about to introduce ourselves. So one student at a time, out loud, said their name, where they were from, and what they had studied. As each person introduced themselves, all I could hear was engineering, because that is what each one of them had studied. With each introduction, I felt my heart sink further. I felt like my insides were being sucked into some oblivion. And of course, it wouldn't be my life if I weren't the last person to introduce myself. You know those drama movie scenes where the main character is the last person to arrive at school or at any event, and everyone stops and stares. Who's that girl? And the crush of the movie is with like sparkles in his eyes. Yes, and how do these scenes end every time? With the main character falling over, doing something catastrophically embarrassing. Every audience's reaction is, oh, no, why did you do that? Okay, maybe I watched way too many movies, but I felt like this was going to be my catastrophically embarrassing moment. I was so afraid of confronting the reality that I wasn't an engineer and that I really didn't belong there. But my turn was coming up, and there was no escape. In that moment, I told myself I had no choice, that I had to be stronger than that feeling. As I said, my name is Julia. I gave the strength to be proud and continued, and I studied biomedical sciences. There were many moments like these throughout my master's, where I succumbed to imposter syndrome and felt distressed looking at all the new mathematical, programming, and physics concepts that I had never heard of, but were considered basic and standard to an engineering student. But each time I told myself that I had to be stronger than this feeling. That if I put my mind to it, I will learn the concept and I will understand it. I would picture myself already knowing it. In life, there will always be moments of insecurity. Some will be of heavier weight than others, but now I know that no matter what insecurity I face, I have the strength inside of me to overcome it. We all do. We just have to tell ourselves that and believe it. And often I find that we are lazy with ourselves. We let our insecurities think on and overthink. But don't be lazy with yourself, with who you are. You are in control of your mind, not the other way around. Define yourself as strong and fight every urge to believe otherwise. Like I said before, don't be afraid to fail, because it does not exist. Challenges do, but it is through challenges that we build our stories, find our strength, and give worth to our achievements. Through the degree, I learned that my strengths were identifying my knowledge gaps, there were many, knowing how to find the right people who could help me and teach me, and that I was a very quick learner. For my research project, I didn't want to choose a random project on offer. I wanted to pursue an idea I was passionate about. So I investigated how magnetism can be used to untether tools for nanoscale surgery. So playing to my strengths, I ran to the physics department, found a lab working in the area of magnetism, and learned with them for a few weeks. Then I wanted to learn about electronics and circuitry, so I learned with the researchers and technicians in the electrical engineering department, and so on. For context, a robot is a machine controlled by a computer that is used to perform jobs automatically. So it is not limited to a mechanical joint like an arm. It can be like in my research where I used a magnet in like a magnet here, and I used in a different space a particle. And I was able to move that particle by moving the magnet over here. And there's nothing in between. And the nanoscale is so small that even a microscope can't see it. As we can see, a millimeter is 1,000 times smaller than a meter, and is the smallest size you can find on your ruler. And a micrometer is 1,000 times smaller than a millimeter. This is where you see at a microscope level. And then nanometer is 1,000 times smaller than that. And at that scale, the mechanics of how things operate, it's quite different. My participation was so successful that the course is now open to non-engineers, and it is being advertised with my story. This can be found on the Imperial website, and in the end, I was able to achieve a distinction in my master's. My graduation picture. And of course our new family addition, Jack, who proposed to me this past summer, and who I am looking forward to marrying this November. So many more graduation pictures from the day, and soon after this, I was offered to be a PhD student at the Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering at Imperial. Yes, with a scholarship. Actually, I received 3 scholarships and had to turn one down because it was just too much money. But I am so grateful to have been nominated and awarded these scholarships to progress the field of medical nano-robotics. And I just started this past October, so I have no major updates, but I can tell you that we are living in exciting times. My laboratory's main objective is called Lab on Chip, where they make microchips that can essentially replace a lab. For it integrates one or many lab functions onto one small device, like this small. And they use this for medical diagnostics. And their current device that has been deployed and can detect multiple different viruses under 30 minutes with a normal human sample. This means you don't need a laboratory to do all sorts of testing, which is really big for rural areas and underdeveloped countries. Places with limited healthcare, and 30 minutes is really quick. However, my supervisor wants me to change the direction of the lab towards making cell wearables, or maybe a lab and a cell. So to make a tiny device that can attach onto an individual cell and be able to measure the human cell activity, such as what is the cell doing, which can give us diagnostics on that individual cell, and also to potentially manipulate that cell, like delivering drugs targeted, or maybe gene editing. Before, there was a lot of skepticism as to whether we could make such a small device, and if that could even be attached onto a cell. But just this past November, there was a new paper published by MIT, where they were able to attach a microchip, so this little thing, onto a cell, and then use it for brain stimulation. Essentially, they had mice with a brain-inflamed region in quite a deep area of the brain. They took immune cells from that mice that are naturally attracted to areas of inflammation. They then attached the chip onto those immune cells and then injected them back into the into the mice. Once those chip cell hybrids had reached the brain-inflamed region, then they were able to use an external light source to remotely stimulate those chips to activate that brain region. This completely revolutionizes medical treatments that would normally use electrode implants in the brain, because they didn't need to perform any surgery at all. So it is all very exciting, and I look forward to sharing more updates in the future. Resilience. So we're back to the start. I hope this has inspired you to take a moment, every so often, to soak in the journey you have already walked, to reflect on the resilient person you are building every second. We are often so focused on reaching a goal that we don't see how our journey shapes our destination. It is what gives value to the end prize. Follow your heart, be motivated, be resilient, grab every opportunity with conviction, and most importantly, and valid throughout life. Dreams don't end when someone else says no. They end when you say no. Before we end, I have a favorite poem I would like to share with you. It has accompanied me through my challenges and helps me strengthen my mindset. I hope it is able to speak to you too. It's called Ithaca by C.P. Kafafi. As you set out for Ithaca, hope your road is a long one, full of adventure, full of discovery. The Strigonians, Cyclops, angry Poseidon, don't be afraid of them. You'll never find things like that on your way. As long as you keep your thoughts raised high, as long as a rare excitement stirs your spirit and your body, the Strigonians, Cyclops, wild Poseidon, you won't encounter them unless you bring them along inside your soul, unless your soul sets them up in front of you. Hope your road is a long one. May there be many summer mornings when, with what pleasure, what joy, you enter harbors you're seeing for the first time. May you stop at Phoenician trading stations to buy fine things, mother of pearl and coral, amber and ebony, sensual perfume of every kind, as many sensual perfumes as you can. And may you visit many Egyptian cities to learn and go learning from their scholars. Keep Ithaca always in your mind. Arriving there is what you're destined for, but don't hurry the journey at all. Better it lasts for years, so you're old by the time you reach the islands, wealthy with all that you've gained on the way, not expecting Ithaca to make you rich. Ithaca gave you the marvelous journey. Without her, you wouldn't have set out. So she has nothing left to give you now. And if you find her poor, Ithaca won't have fooled you. Wise as you will have become, so full of experience, you will have understood by then what these Ithacas mean. Thank you for listening, and a big thank you to my family and their unconditional love and support. And now, I hand it over to you.
Inspirational, amazing, thank you. Do we have any questions? I think you've left us all in awe. Annie?
Yes, I'm sorry I was I don't speak very well English. First of all, I want to congratulate you because what you said, it's for your lecture. It's very interesting that your story talked to me for two reasons. My grandchildren, my granddaughter, she's 10 years old, and she's like you, dyslexic. And I tried to, because I was a teacher, so I trained also myself as a teacher, speech therapy. And she's not as dyslexic as you are, but she's facing a lot of problems that you do. So what I think, you should write a book. You should write a book because your experience is very interesting and you can help other people. Because you know what, all what you said talked to me very much. And I learned a lot from what your own experience, even though my granddaughter, she's not as dyslexic as you are. But as I told you, I trained also myself because my husband had a lot of problems for this, at the end of his life. I trained myself with speech therapy. But what is important, you not only need speech therapy, you need the développement, en France on dit développement personnel, because what you did, because what you had to face was not only the problem of reading and writing and spelling, but you had to face your how do you say that?
Bullying.
Sorry, I don't like to speak, especially in English.
It's okay, don't worry.
But you have to face the people that
Bullying.
to your social problems, and you had to be strong even for yourself. And so I think that if you had to write a book, you had to talk about your own problems, but the way that you went through your resilience. And I think it is important to teach that to others, to help them. So je vous encourage to write a book.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I will.
Julia, that was fascinating. And it was really, in this world today, which is so full of negative things, you are full of positive, which gives your surroundings more and more positive. And I totally agree that you should write so that some of the other people can learn from what you have experienced in many ways, in the many areas of life. Not only the problems of speaking and reading, but of everything.
Thank you.
But the love
Yeah.
is the biggest thing.
I would not be here if it wasn't for
Voila. That's, I have experienced in my life, I'm a bit older than you are, but love is a wonderful thing. So you have had loves around you, you have had these positive things around you, so you can make anything in your life.
I'm very grateful that my mom never let me look at a situation in a negative light. Right? She yesterday I was speaking to my mom, I was practicing, and she was like, "Oh, you sound a bit like too okay with the things that happened with you and the bullying." And I said, "But I don't want to look back and be upset about what happened. You know, like I want to be stuck in that moment." Of course, when I came back from school, of course, in the moment, I was really upset and it was really hurtful. But I feel like if I were to stay in that moment, I wouldn't have progressed. And I want to be someone more than just that person that was being targeted. I want to learn from that experience.
Yeah, all the challenges make you grow.
Yes, exactly.
So I really hope that you have a wonderful life.
Thank you so much.
I think we have a question down the back here, yep.
Hi Julia, my name is Lenka and I'm just really listening to your life story. You are a multi-talented, gifted young person.
Thank you so much.
Lovely young lady. And the way you presented your life story so far, it was like a performance. And I'm sure that you would excel in performing arts as well. And this leads me to a question, what are your hobbies?
Really embarrassingly, I don't do much than study. I think I took that from my childhood where I often had to work really hard, and I still, even though I'm doing a PhD, I still find things quite hard. I don't know everything in my field at all. So I don't have many hobbies apart from certain things that I think relaxes me, such as crocheting, and I like to sew my own clothes and like to add patterns. I'm very creative. I like to draw. Yeah, and I think that you spoke about performing arts. Actually, my sister is an amazing singer. And if you ever get an opportunity to listen to her, please do. She's just here. She got chosen to be Annie at the International Players production here in Paris. And they asked me to be Duffy. So I have actually done performing arts in the past. I really loved it. And it was really fun, but I'm a terrible singer, so definitely not going into musical theater. But maybe could be a fun hobby to do and explore on the side.
That was a great question. Any others?
Like my daughter, she's very artistic. She does a lot of things with her hands.
Yeah.
beautiful. There's beautiful things.
Yeah, I feel like
Oh
when
yeah, she's
when
very
I feel like one thing that dyslexia is a tool for is being able to see many different things and fix that puzzle. There was like in my second year of university, I had a question about whether we could, there's this thing called transcranial magnetic stimulation where you're able to stimulate the brain from the outside, and I wanted to see whether we could cause different brain regions to be stimulated to then cause you to be happy, and therefore when you're happy you get healthier much quicker. So I wanted to see whether that was possible, and my professor thought it was fun, so she went along with it, and I actually wrote a whole paper and theorized different pathways which we could do this through. I never published it, or it was just really for fun. But I was able to theorize different pathways because I was able to read from so many different fields and then kind of construct and see in my mind how they all fitted together. And I think that's like a big skill that I've learned how to use over the years.
I think you answered a little bit my question, because I was just thinking about your PhD and what you think about artificial intelligence. It's something we all fear because we don't know so much about it.
Yes.
But what is your take on the whole thing?
I think it has a lot of capabilities. I don't know about the newer AI models right now. The previous ones I didn't think was very useful to me. They're really good for writing an email and doing your administrative work, but it makes mistakes. So it's not great at. It wasn't really good at complex mathematics, and it's more of you need to learn how to use AI to be able to actually benefit from it. So until I don't think AI is going to take. I think there are certain jobs, of course, that will be taken over by AI. But I think it's about us adapting and learning how to use the AI, and I don't think that we should fear it. We should embrace it and learn how to use it to our advantage.
Hello, Julian. You have your life story has really inspired, I think, most of us. And what I can say that you have really, really shown resilience to what you are today and what you were when you started. So congratulations. It was really, really very interesting and very inspiring.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Julia. I'm very much interested in nano-robotic things that you are doing.
Yes.
And is it already using to a certain patient, or is it already using in the certain hospital?
So robotics is used in hospitals already. There's a robot called the Da Vinci, which is a massive machine, and essentially it has different probes that goes inside the body, and those probes themselves work at millimeter scale, tiny, quite small. And the surgeon is in a different machine with his head inside of it, and with a joystick is controlling the robot remotely. So we have those, but we don't have anything that is non-invasive. So it's still quite large. We still need to make an incision, or we need to put a tube inside. But we don't have anything that is nanoscale yet. There's a lot of problems with introducing any nanoscale devices into the body, because we need to make sure that, one, it's not going to cause a reaction, that the body's not going to react and be like, what on earth is this thing inside of me? And then you also need to make sure that when the body breaks it down, that the end components, the metabolized parts, are not toxic, right? So certain things can accumulate in different areas of the body, and then that causes disruption in the organs. And so you need to make sure that everything is taken care of in the body before you can put it inside. And often, if you're using nano-robotics, you're going to need to use quite a few nano-robots. So then you have many more things that could accumulate, that could go wrong. So the research is there. I can see it happening in a few years' time. I don't know how long, but it's in its developing stages, and we're hopeful.
Yes. One last question, I think, from Arlene.
Thank you, Julia. Truly an inspirational story, and I agree you should write a book. I think it would help people at so many levels. So it's like something waiting their time. My question is, after this incredible way of studying and learning and exploring resilience, what's next? I mean, are you planning to stay in academia or go into the medical field? What are your aspirations?
I'm not quite sure yet just now, just because I've literally just done 3 months of my PhD and I have 3 years left. And I have 3 years and a half actually, because I've got 4 years in total. And I have thought about doing a postdoc after. I have thought about, well, if I'm able to make this cell wearable, maybe commercializing it so they can be sold and applied in the field. I have also thought about going into medical school. I really like one-to-one contact and helping individuals. Because I think there's something different about making a device that will end up helping a big quantity of people and then being able to actually see that help one-on-one every day. So there's a lot of possibilities of where I could go in 4 years' time. And I'm excited to explore them over the next 4 years and see which one suits me best. Maybe I'll do all three. If I have time. Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Maybe I can do a postdoc with my medical school and also have a company on the side, and I'll just make my dad take care of that. That's what fathers are for, of course.
Thank you very much, Julia. That was, I don't think anybody here will leave without being inspired by your story. And yeah, it was just amazing. I found particularly the piece you wrote after you graduated very poignant. I think we all have those moments. I feel emotional thinking about it, but those moments we want to go back and tell ourselves, don't be so scared, it's doable. So we've got these flowers for you. Now it's from the club, however, a lovely member, Liz, took it upon herself. She wanted to get these for you. So
Thank you so much.
thank you very much.
Now, part of your blood is from the north.
Yes. I am like
So,
half of me.
yes. So, resilience, where does it come from? Do you think it comes from north or?
I'd just like to mention next month we have the